Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Now today we're going to be talking about and taking a look at something a bit special. It's this thing in my left hand. This is the Big Screen Beyond 2 virtual reality headset. Now, I've got to be honest, I'm not the most clued up about VR tech. I've got no idea which is the best, which VR headset does something better than another VR headset. But what I am though is just your average punter, possibly like many of you watching this video right now, who would specifically look at using this for sim racing only. And I'd like to think that with all my years of sim racing experience, I know what feels right and what doesn't. So basically what I'm saying is that if you're looking for an in-depth tech video about this headset, then this video is probably not the one for you. But if you're a regular guy just like me, then this might be of interest. But before we dive in any further, the necessary disclosure. Big Screen sent me this headset free of charge to create this content. They haven't made any demands regarding what I should or what I shouldn't say, and they've got no creative control over this video, and as always, they don't see it before you do. But that being said, I have marked this video up on YouTube as paid promotion, as I was sent this headset for free. But it's not a sponsored video. So for those of you that don't know, I am a huge fan of VR. Well, more specifically, sim racing in VR. And I've owned numerous headsets over the years, from the original Oculus Rift to a couple of Oculus Rift S's to a HP Reverb G2, and more recently, the DPVR. So it's fair to say that I have dabbled quite a bit, but nothing has ever really made me want to switch over permanently to VR for sim racing. But the Big Screen Beyond 2 showed up and has potentially changed the way I look at sim racing forever. But I'll come back to that. So I'll give you some information and some specs about this headset. So first of all, you can see it's small, like really small. And Big Screen claims it only weighs 107 grams. But I've checked, and on my scales, this comes in at 113 grams. I then weighed it with the facial interface and the head strap, you know, everything that's going to be on your head, and it comes in at 194 grams. So it's heavier than the claim, but still way lighter than any headset that I've ever used. And to put it into some context, it's about the same as these two small apples. Impressive. So the headset is attached using the provided head strap, but there is another head strap which goes over the top of the head. But I didn't really need that. And when you order the Big Screen VR, there is a requirement to scan your face with an iPhone, as each of these facial interfaces is custom made for the user. Now, I don't have an iPhone. I had to borrow one from a family member, but it's all done via a browser, and it literally took a couple of minutes. But just make sure that you do have access to one, as it is a requirement to get the custom facial interface. It has dual micro OLED displays with a resolution of 2560 by 2560 per eye, giving a total resolution of 5120 by 2560 at 90 Hz, with a horizontal field of view of 108. It also has an adjustable IPD range of 48 to 75 millimeters. That's essentially the distance between your eyes, so it can be adjusted to suit the user with a small tool which is provided with the headset. It's worth saying though at this point that you can't wear glasses with this headset, but you can purchase prescription lens inserts. You just have to provide Big Screen with your latest prescription details and they'll sort it. I didn't have the prescription lens inserts for this test. I said I didn't need them, but then changed my mind, so they are on order. Connectivity wise, you've got one USB-C cable which attaches to the headset, which then connects to a small link box. On the other side of that link box, you've got one DisplayPort cable and two USB cables which have to be connected to USB 3 ports. The headset doesn't have any inside-out tracking, so you will also need at least one base station. I'm using the Vive Steam VR base station, and on the PC, I'm using Steam VR. And if you wanted to use some VR controllers, well, you've got to buy those separately. So the price you see for the Big Screen Beyond 2 is for the headset only. So let's talk about the user experience, which is probably what you're here for. Now, in the Big Screen Beyond utility, you can make a few changes to the headset, brightness, fan speed, software IPD adjustment, but one of the more significant settings to change is the refresh rate. Now, you've got two options, 75 Hz and 90 Hz. Now, at 90 Hz in Steam VR, the 100% resolution is 2688 by 2688. But at 75 Hz, the resolution is 3560 by 3560, none of which match the claimed native resolution of 2560 by 2560, which I found a little bit confusing. Now, from what I've read, it's all about bandwidth. And at 90 Hz, the signal is compressed and then reconstructed on the headset, essentially scaling back up to the native resolution. But with 75 Hz, there's no compression and you get the native resolution straight to the headset. Now, both options look great, but if I'm being honest, the 75 Hz mode does look a tiny bit sharper if you're actually looking for the differences. But in my use case scenario when sim racing, the difference isn't that great. And in my opinion, a small reduction in clarity is definitely worth an extra 15 frames a second. Now, the OLED displays are bright, the colour reproduction looks very good indeed, and the sweet spot is much larger than I've ever seen on any VR headset that I've previously used. Obviously, if you're looking for it on the edges, you can see it's not as clear as it is in the centre. But for my use case, sim racing, it's not a problem at all. So I mentioned earlier that all you get when you buy the headset is the VR headset itself, and any base stations or controllers have to be bought separately. Now, Big Screen were kind enough to send me one Vive Steam VR base station, which worked, but the tracking wasn't great. In a room with no obstructions, it would probably be fine, but I'm going to talk about my specific sim racing setup. When I was using it, I had triple screens on the rig, and getting the right placement for the base station was a bit of a challenge. I had to have it quite close so it wasn't obstructed by one of the side screens, but that meant when turning away from the base station looking to the right, the view would shift forward slightly, which was a little immersion breaking. I removed one of the monitors and placed the base station a little bit further away, which improved things, but the tracking when sitting in the sim rig wasn't the best with just one. So I bought another base station, brand new secondhand from eBay, and mounted it to the other side of the rig, which has improved things massively. Now, I just thought that was worth mentioning, as a lot of us switch from VR to screens from time to time, and the base stations aren't cheap at a couple of £100 a pop. But that being said, at the start of this video, I alluded to the fact that this headset has possibly changed the way I looked at sim racing forever. Now, I've always been a fan of VR, but the combination of the reduced visual quality compared to a screen and the general size and weight of previous headsets that I've used meant I wasn't able to switch to it permanently. It just wasn't worth it. But now, with the size of the Big Screen Beyond 2, it's genuinely an option. Now, I've put quite a number of hours into testing this headset and worn it pretty much all day for a few days, and it felt absolutely fine. No discomfort whatsoever. This headset has made me realise that there is absolutely no substitute for VR if you're looking for immersion and that feeling of being in the car. I thought I had that on the triples, but it's not in the same ballpark. And I've actually taken the triples off the rig because racing in VR has ruined racing on a screen. What you see in VR isn't what you guys see on screen when you watch VR content. In VR, you're there. It's three-dimensional and everything is perfectly scaled. It all just feels natural. So onto pricing, which if you bought one of these, it's going to sting a little bit. Now, for the headset alone, it's going to set you back £1,099. And if you wanted the eye tracking option, it's an extra £150. If you wanted to add the prescription lens inserts, that's another £89. Then, of course, you're going to need base stations, which could potentially cost you another £400. So before you know it, you're approaching £1,500. Is it worth it? I don't know. It's subjective. It depends how deep your pockets are and depends how much change you can find down the back of the sofa. But if you've got that kind of money put aside for a VR headset, then I would highly recommend it. Hands down, the best VR headset that I've ever used. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Big Screen for sending me this VR headset out to test and use and providing me with the opportunity to have more VR content on the channel. Genuinely, up to this point, for me at least, there's been nothing on the market which ticked all the boxes until now. So I'll leave a link down below in the description if you want to go and check it out in more detail. That is an affiliate link, so if you bought one of these, I'll get a couple of quid thrown my way. But I don't mind if you don't use that link. Choose your favourite content creator and use theirs if they've got one. But Big Screen have provided me with a code, and if used, you will get a free pair of gloves when ordering a headset. Just add the gloves to the basket along with the headset and use the code DaveCam at checkout and you'll get the gloves for free. But just be aware, when the gloves are gone, they're gone. They don't have that many, so if you do want them, you're going to have to be quick. But hopefully this video has been some help to someone who is considering buying their next VR headset. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great week. See you later. Cheers.